Hi everyone, welcome back to Naomi's Bookshelf, and I am here with a Jane Austen July tag. This is going to be on Tuesday when you're watching it, so I think I might be doing Tag Tuesday from now on. We'll see if I can do too much of that or not. I feel like I've been putting out a lot of videos lately for the reading rush or for my wrap-ups or whatever, but hey, nothing's a problem. If you like seeing my face, there you go. So we're gonna do the Jane Austen July book tag. I was tagged by Megan and Sarah, and I think it's really fun. Jane Austen July was such a fun thing to participate in, even on a low-key scale, because I only read Northanger Abbey and Sense Sensibility this month, so it's kind of on a low-key, but I really did enjoy it, and I felt like it was a nice re-immersion into the Jane's writing style. So we're just going to go straight into the tag. The first question is your favorite Jane book, and for me that is Persuasion. I really connect with this one as Anne is older, she is enjoying her singleness, and I feel like you can learn a lot from her in her singleness. I once read an article about it and it really just stuck with me. I can actually link it below if you're interested in what you can learn from singleness and Jane Austen, especially in Persuasion. So yeah, my favorite Jane book. The next question is, who is your favorite Jane Austen protagonist? And for me that is Eleanor, especially on a reread this month. I really love her. I love her strength and her determination and her gumption, and basically. She's just so amazing, and I really do appreciate all that she is in the books. And I feel like so often people look at these books, well, maybe not true Janeites, but so often the wider people look at this book and think that Eleanor is the main character, but she's not. It's Jane, not Jane. It's Eleanor, and I really do love Eleanor. I think Marianne's great, but Eleanor is the main person in the story. She's really the main focus, and she's what's driving the plot and driving the characters. So Eleanor, I just love. The next question is, what's a book on your shelves that Jane would approve of and why? And I was looking at through my shelves. I was like, I don't own that many. I don't think I own that many. But I found this one, I'm like, I think Jane actually would appreciate it. And that's Crazy Rich Asians by Kevin Kwan, because this is a total satire of the culture that he grew up in this aristocratic kind of Chinese, very extremely old money kind of society, and he grew up in that, and then he wrote a satire about it. And so if you take it as a satire, it's really great, and I think she would really appreciate it. I think she did a lot of that kind of, not so blatantly, but also in her books you can see where she's pushing it and she's challenging certain social acceptabilities, if that makes sense. So I think she would have actually really enjoyed this. And I haven't read book 2 yet, but I think it's going to be great, just like this one. So yeah, that's my answer for a book Jane Austen would have enjoyed. The next question is a book that Jane Austen would have hated and why. And I've got to say, I have a few on my shelves that I think she would have been uninterested in or disliked, but I don't think she might have massively hated a lot of my books. But I think she would have hated this one. I think she would have hated Lady Killers. And it's stories told by Tori Telfer. And it's these, I don't even remember how many stories. I think it's like 10 stories about female killers, basically, in history. And they're not the common ones you look at when you're looking at true crime. You always find that, like, the same typical ones. The one who, oh, I can't remember her name right now, but the one who lured Norwegian men to her farm and then killed them and left them there and stole their money. And like Kate, Kissing Kate, I think is her name, who was on like Little House on the Prairie side. It was like existing during Little House on the Prairie times. But this one covers people from different parts of history that you don't normally hear about. When I read this one, I kind of consider myself a true crime junkie sometimes when I'm in the mood, and especially when it comes to female serial killers or female killers, because they're just so not talked about, and I find it really interesting. So when I read this, I only recognized 2 stories out of, I think, actually must have been more than 10. Yeah, 15 I think it is. 10 to 15 stories, I only recognized 2 people. So I was really impressed, but I know that Jane would have absolutely hated this because she would not have read anything related to this. So yeah. The next question is a favorite minor character. And for me, it's from Pride and Prejudice, but there's such a tie because like, I love all of Jane Austen's minor characters, but I think because like even Northanger Abbey, I loved Eleanor Tilney. I just really adored her and thought she was great. But in this one, I think I kind of have to go with Mr. Collins as a classic. I just think he's great. I've always said that if I were to ever be in a show, I'm not much of an actress. I've done a few things when I was like a teenager, but if I were ever to be in a show and I could play any gender, I would play Mr. Collins because he would just be so much fun to play. I think he's just so ridiculous that it's just like, it's great. I think you can totally make it workable. Every time I see a Mr. Collins character, I just think everyone has a different take on it, but it's so wonderfully done. But I also, in this book, really love Lady Catherine. I think she's just ridiculous in the sense how strong, like how important she thinks she is. And she's really not. And then if you combine Lady Catherine with Mr. Collins, it's quite a funny duo, to say the least. And poor Charlotte having to put up with them all, who I also really love for her cunning and wit. And I think she deserves a lot better than most people give her. So that whole trio maybe is my favorite minor character. The next question is as a book on your shelves that you think was inspired by Jane. And for me, I was looking at my shelves and I was like, a lot of books are inspired by Jane, but I don't think I own many of them. I think I own a lot of mysteries and thrillers, a lot of historical fiction, which isn't a bad thing, but I do think it's more, when I think of Jane, I think of contemporary times, I think of the same themes, and I don't think a lot of my shelves have those, basically. I do love Jane, obviously, but I don't think I have many of the same books as hers, when I think about her as her books were written by her, contemporary style. But I found this one, I was thinking, it has a lot of similar themes to Persuasion in some ways, and also the whole family dynamic kind of thing. So that is The Language of Flowers by Vanessa Diefenbaugh, or Diefenbaugh. I think it's very similar in some ways, and I feel like a lot of my thing about books now is that when you look at Jane Austen, she really set up the stereotype for romantic books. She set up the enemies to lovers. She had to set up the friends to lovers. She wrote the original, like, torn apart by time and brought back together again. If you look at every single one of her books, you find a common trend that's happening in romance books, and has been happening in romance books or movies for like centuries now, since Jane Austen wrote her 6 novels, which all cover a different trope, and she kind of was the first to do it in some of those cases. So I feel like a lot of books take on that, but it's hard to figure out which ones don't realize they're inspired by her. So I think that this one has the taste of it. It's about this foster girl who grows up with this woman named Elizabeth for part-time, and then she's torn apart, and I can't tell you why because that's a spoiler. And then she comes back, and but mostly it's taking place after she's 18 and she's aged out of the system, and her desire to find a family. So I think in many ways this is taking after Persuasion. I think it also kind of takes after, what was I thinking? I think it also in some ways takes after Sensibility, and as well as Pride and Prejudice in some minor forms. But yeah, I think this one is inspired, but without knowing it's inspired, as I kind of read the question that way. So yeah. The last question is a Jane Austen character you love to hate. So there are several that I love to hate. Just to name a few, like Wickham is an obvious one who, if you've read the books, before you've read the books or while you're reading the books, you don't really hate him until the end. And so I hate him. I hate, who else do I hate? Like Willoughby isn't really hated. I think Henry Crawford is really interesting, but I don't hate him. And like these different characters, I just don't, hate. And so I think I'm gonna go with John Thorpe, her one for original novels, her original one. As I was listening to it like literally last week, I was like, oh, seriously, can John Thorpe just shut his mouth and go away, please? He just was awful. I hate him. You can see it all in my wrap up, which I posted on Sunday, and I'll link it below. But I just really hate John Thorpe. He drives me crazy. And like General Tilney as well, to a certain extent in this book, because he is just so awful. I think that he definitely takes the money grabber, the money hunter, to a next level. The way he treats her when they first meet, to when she's staying in their house, and then to the way that he treats her after. I'm not going to go into detail in case you haven't read it. It's bad. And I really hate him for that. And even what he puts his children through. So I guess this book has my favorite villains. Although I do love the villains in the other books, I think that they are more human, so less hateable, if that makes sense. But yeah, so that's my answer. So the last thing to do is to tag people, and I will be tagging Rainy Day Reads, as I know she read Jane Austen July books this month. And I also will be tagging Kate Howe. If you feel like doing it, that'd be great. I'd love to see answers from both of you. And anyone else who's answered this, please let me know, and I'd love to go watch your version of the tag. And if you'd like to subscribe, please do. And I'll come to you next time with a new video. Bye.